Hello, this is Manic.mercurian with manic.mercurian.net. And before we get into this birth chart reading, I did want to offer whoever comments on this video with their birth date, time, and place, and the code MANICMAY. For you, I will give a free birth chart reading. The only caveat is that I would like to post that one publicly. Not all my birth chart readings are posted publicly, but just for this free offer, I want to get a free birth chart reading out there for whoever wants it. Okay, but for this reading, this will be for Saturday, September 9th, 1972 at 9:16 p.m. in Atlanta, Georgia. So this means that you have Sun in Virgo, Moon in Libra with Aries rising. Okay, so let's talk about the kind of basics here. So the first thing I noticed is that you are, of course, a Virgo, Sun in Virgo. You have some other planets there too, though, Mercury and Mars as well. So there's a lot of Virgo energy, a lot of practicality. You're probably really good with handling a lot of detail, probably very logical, very analytical. These are all kind of classic Virgo traits, so you'll probably relate to a lot of that. But kind of adding into this, practical, earthy Virgo, adding into the mix here, you also have Moon in Libra, which is a lot different. Having Moon in Libra definitely adds a little bit of charisma. Typically individuals who have Libra placements are really good at handling people, and they tend to be very approachable. So you may notice that people, can kind of, you may feel like people kind of offload onto you because you're very approachable. You're probably a very good listener. And you're very easygoing. You can kind of adapt and kind of go along with, the people that you're around because you are a diplomat of sorts. You'd make an excellent middle person. You might not always enjoy that, but you may find yourself in that kind of, middle person, keeping the peace, that type of thing. And because you have not only Moon in Libra, but also Moon very close to the descendant, this makes you very empathetic, very focused on other people. You're probably, very attentive toward others' needs and really excellent at reading people or, anticipating others' moods, thoughts, things like that. And going along with this, there is definitely a lot of charisma, I think, that comes from Libra placements. But going along with that, you also have Aries rising. So this means that you are excellent at starting things, at initiating things. For all of us, the ascendant it kind of symbolizes how we initiate things, like what our first, what our approach is, and it is our first impression and things like that. But having that in Aries is all about starting things, and it's a very fiery energy. So you may actually come across to people more confident, more outgoing than you actually feel at times. If so, that's because of your Aries rising. You have a knack for kind of starting things. So I think that, it's kind of an excellent mix because, going back to your planets here, most of the general focus, I would say, is in Virgo and Libra. Both of these signs are very different from one another, but they're both intellectual. So this means that you may have a tendency to kind of overthink things or, get lost in the analysis of things. There's definitely a lot of strength here. I would speculate you're probably really excellent at learning, figuring things out and handling a large amount of information. But again, typically the downside of that kind of approach or of that, high amount of mental energy is that you could get lost. You could be indecisive at times. So while you may have a little bit of that kind of indecisiveness, or you may become a little bit directionless at times if you get too lost in your thoughts, while you may still have some of that, your Aries rising is a nice kind of complement to that. It shows that oftentimes when to start things, how to begin things, how to approach certain situations. And again, combining Aries rising with Libra moon, both of these are really charismatic placements. So I would speculate you're probably a little bit more charismatic than the typical Virgo. Many people who have a lot of Virgo placements can feel a little bit awkward because they're so focused on analyzing everything. And there's a certain level of detachment there. So again, while you may have some of that, you also have these other placements showing that you have this kind of charisma. You know how to handle people, you know how to approach people. So definitely a kind of a wide skill set there, I think. Just kind of taking a first glance at your chart. What else can we talk about? I definitely want to stress again the very hospitable. We'll talk about the career area later on in the reading, but I'm already thinking you'd probably be excellent with anything having to do with accommodating people, anticipating people's needs, or that, but also using your kind of social skills and charisma as well. Combining that charisma with Virgo's attention to detail could be very useful for you for sure. There's also a lot of strong work ethic that typically comes with Virgo. That would come with your Virgo Sun, Mercury, and Mars. Okay, what else can we talk about here? Let's kind of branch out a little bit. We'll also talk in the career part of the reading about your Capricorn midheaven. You may come across a little bit serious in public, but we'll talk more about that a little bit later. Something that's a little bit different, you have South Node in Cancer, so this means that you're actually very sensitive. And this may seem a little bit contradictory because your placements in Virgo and Libra suggest that you can be a little bit detached. Again, you tend to be a very thoughtful person, very kind of mentally oriented person, very intellectual. So it makes sense that you'd be attracted toward something like this, which is all analysis. Astrology can be a lot of analysis. It can get very technical, very detail oriented. So things like that, that's just an example, but you tend to be very cerebral, very intelligent for sure. But again, something a little bit different than that, something that a lot of people may not know, is that you also have South Node in Cancer. So you can actually be very sensitive. You can actually be somewhat of a touchy-feely person in the right situation. I don't think this would be consistent, again, because we're combining Cancer South Node with these very intellectual placements. But when the situation's right, I think you could be a very touchy-feely person, very sensitive. You would definitely want a certain level of like closeness. I mean that physically, touching and things like that, you might enjoy a lot. But also just closeness, it may be very important for you to have certain friends or family that you can rely on, certain people that are very close to you. I think this is also common with people who have a lot of empathetic placements or empathic placements like you do. This can be great for understanding people and for other people to open up to you, but it can also be overwhelming, having so many people just kind of, dump on you and not realize, others who may not know you very well may not always recognize how you're thinking or feeling. They may just think that you are, let me rephrase that. You kind of seem like you're feeling what other people are feeling. Other people may assume that you're on the same page as they are, because you're naturally so adaptable and accommodating. But they may not realize that, it can be very draining for you being around people all the time. Although you may be, very excellent at it, I do think it could be a little bit draining. In other words, I think you're, maybe leaning toward the introverted side for sure, just judging by your placements here. So again, that's where I do think it would be very important for you to have some close people in your life, whether it be a romantic relationship, friends, family. It's going to be really important for your well-being to have some people that you can really rely on and trust and kind of relax around, kind of let your guard down around. And I can cite multiple placements for this. Definitely the Cancer South Node, but also going back again to Moon and Libra conjunct the Descendant. Whenever you have, a really strong placement like the Moon here close to the Descendant, it means that your partnerships are almost... they're almost synonymous with your own identity. In other words, it's very critical for your well-being to have healthy partnerships. Like if your partnership isn't healthy, you're not healthy in a way. And I think, you could say more or less that we all are like that. You could apply that to everyone, but this is especially true for you. Your relationships are very important for you. If you do have a romantic relationship, it's going to be extremely important for you, more so than the typical person. So I think it would be important to, you could use your intellect. You could use that, the complex mind that you have. You're really great with details and looking at patterns. You can use all that to ensure that you're around the right people, basically. Especially, the people that you confide in. Again, that's going to be really important for you, because those partnerships are, it's like they're part of your identity, I think is what I'm trying to get at here. Definitely any kind of friends, family, any kind of relationships really, but especially those one-on-one partnerships that you have. So romantic for sure, but any other kind of partnership as well. If you have a best friend or a business partner, I would just say to, be extra selective, use your intelligence, because it looks like you have a lot of that. Just use that to ensure that you can really trust the people that you're around, because, on the other hand, it could be very detrimental if you are around people who are unstable or negative, cynical, or people who, unload on you. It's going to be detrimental to your well-being that way. So just be selective, I guess, is my advice, because it does look like you're very sensitive for sure. Okay, what else can we talk about? Jupiter in Sagittarius is really strong, and it's in the 9th house, so that shows that you can readily attract abundance and a certain level of adventure. And because Jupiter's in the 9th house, this means that you really thrive with higher learning. I think you already would thrive with higher learning because of those Virgo and Libra placements. You're an excellent learner, excellent student, especially in more detached kinds of learning, like learning from a book or from, like a class, like a lecture, learning from any kind of words, verbiage, whether it be, you're listening to something or reading something. I think, you already have these Virgo and Libra placements, which suggests that you're an excellent student. But adding on top of that, the Jupiter in Sagittarius in the 9th house, it really looks like you'd thrive with higher learning. So, I wouldn't be surprised if you've been to, university and pursued some kind of higher learning that way. But it doesn't just have to be, occupational and things like that. Even astrology is a form of higher learning. I think that speculating by your placements, I would speculate that you really want to take it to the next level. So it may start out with you thriving in academic situations. I think that would be a big likelihood for you, a big part of your life maybe. But I could see you really genuinely want to figure out how the world works, though. You really want to understand yourself and other people. It looks like you're very analytical. You're kind of constantly thinking. You can sometimes get stuck in your own head a little bit. So anyway, I'm getting a little bit sidetracked, but the point I was trying to make is excellent with higher learning. You may be drawn toward higher learning, not just academics, although that's a huge part of it, but also just, wanting to know, the really bigger questions, philosophy, and you may be drawn towards spirituality or religion. 9th house can definitely be university, but can also be religion or spirituality, because any of those things can answer the bigger questions for us, like about the cosmos and, where do we go when we die, things like that, you may be very curious about, very interested in. Let's see here. I'm trying not to get too ahead of myself, because I like to keep these readings kind of compartmentalized or, separated into categories. But I think that's enough general, I think we can get into the later parts of the readings here. But just taking a first glance at your chart, very intellectual, lots of intellectual energy. I really can't stress that enough. Very cerebral, excellent with people, very accommodating, empathic. But also you do have that Aries rising, that spark, that kind of fire. You can initiate things. You can come across very confident. You can have some really great confidence and really plunge into new situations, which is excellent too. Really nice compliment to all the intellectual energy of Virgo and Libra. Good work ethic. Okay, let's get into so this next part, I'm trying to think of a way to sum it up. It's kind of like about your karma in the second part of the reading. We're going to talk about what your past lives may have been about, and then from there we're going to go into the karma that you kind of are working with in this life, and then where you are going in this life. And we're going to talk about some of the biggest challenges that you're experiencing in this life, as well as, where is this going? What direction are you kind of evolving and developing into? Okay, so first let's talk about past lives. So for this, I really mostly just look to the South Node. For you, South Node is in the 4th house, Cancer. So this means that in a past life, or in maybe multiple past lives, you may have been very private, very sheltered, and very much focused on family. You almost really weren't focused on your own individuality. You had to be a caretaker of sorts. You had to care for other people. You may have been a mother or filled some kind of like matriarchal role, some kind of someone who had to be very receptive and very intuitive and very, in tune with their emotions. So usually that would be in the form of a nurturer. So you may have been a mother. You could have been a man too. I think it's a little bit less likely with South Node in Cancer, 4th house. But male or female, you had to take care of other people. So I don't know. You could have been a mother of, a big family with lots of kids, and your whole, the main bulk of your life was just fixated on taking care of other people. Or you could have been like a nurse, someone whose job it was to, take care of others. What else? Or it could have even been, I was going to say a queen or a matriarch, but it would usually be something where you were at home more. Cancer has to do with the home and family. So you likely weren't in a very public type of role in your past life. It was more at home. I'm trying to think of other things it could be other than just like the mother, but that's the main theme for sure. The main archetype, motherly things. But yeah, like I said, nurse, taking care of other people. I think you get the picture. So that's what you dealt with in a past life. You had to be, you had to really give all of yourself emotionally in order to take care of another person or maybe multiple other people. So coming into this life, I think that's where, you have these other placements which also show that you're a very empathic person, empathetic person. I think, combining Moon and Libra conjunct Descendant with the Virgo placements, it means you love helping people. You feel, we all feel good when we help people, but you especially, you love taking care of others, and, so that's where a lot of that comes from, is a past life. This also means that in this life, it's your comfort zone to be at home, or even to take it to a more extreme step. It's your comfort zone to be at home or in bed or in your own room. You love the, familiar settings, or you like to be with people that you really know and trust and already have rapport with. Whatever is very familiar to you. And again, you could say that about everyone, but this is especially true for you. That's your comfort zone, because that's what you've done in past lives. It's, it's familiar. It's whatever's familiar to you is extra familiar, because that's where you spent most of your time in your past lives, if that makes sense. So there is a lot of strength there for sure. The South Node in all of our charts does represent an area that we already come to this life knowing about. We're familiar with that energy. We're good at it. We don't really have to develop a whole lot there. So for you, your emotions are strong coming into this life. You know how you feel, and again, with that comes a lot of this empathetic, nurturing. You are excellent in that area. What is more difficult for you is going out into the world and kind of making a name for yourself, being independent. North Node is in 10th house Capricorn. So, it's great to have that stability of being able to sit with yourself and sit with, in an environment that's familiar to you and peaceful. And again, like I said, it's important for your well-being. You have to spend time alone or with people that you are close to you from time to time. But it's all about balance. What North Node and Capricorn 10th house is showing is that although it may initially feel uncomfortable, the more time you spend out in the world, in public, developing your career and working independently, these things will initially be uncomfortable, but this is where you're going to find a lot of your abundance. You have a lot of potential there. And really the two kind of go hand in hand, actually. If you can Like, for instance, you can make a career in order to help people. If you, like, you may feel comfortable staying at home or in familiar positions, settings. But you also have this urge to help people and be nurturing. So, why not combine them? And, if you want to take your nurturing or helpfulness to the next level, you could make a career out of it and also, make a living out of it. Find your independence day. There's something in it for you too. I think that's also what North Node and Capricorn is showing is making a name for yourself, being independent. But part of being independent is working for your own good as well. So be a little bit selfish when it's appropriate, And like I said, the two can go hand in hand. You can help people and get something out of it too. It doesn't have to just be charity. You could, I don't know, do some kind of business, I'm going to save a lot of that for the career part of the reading. But North Node and Capricorn, it does have a lot to do with your career. It's showing, spend more time there. And whenever I say these things, I say these things knowing that you've probably already made a lot of progress in that area. But this may have been something you struggled with a lot earlier in life. You may not have been comfortable, in public or at work in general. For you, especially considering that you have South IC in Cancer as well as South Node with Midheaven and North Node in Capricorn, this means that inherently that the world is a dangerous place. Like, you kind of feel on your guard in public. So this may have been something that you struggled with early in life. You may have been tempted to just stay at home, stay, with people you already know and not branch out. But I would speculate by now you've probably already made a lot of progress and learned how to kind of cope with the outer world and maybe even thrive there. Because like I said, having Midheaven and North Node and Capricorn, to me, they suggest that you probably won't initially thrive and feel comfortable in public and in your career, but eventually there is definitely a lot of abundance there for you, a lot of potential there for you. Okay, and I know this part of the reading is very heavy, but I think a lot of you enjoy that. A lot of you who are interested in astrology, like myself. So, going off of that, there's one other main area of challenges, let's just say, especially early in life. So that would be, of course, Saturn. You were born with Saturn in Gemini. So this means that, this kind of goes along with what I was saying, actually. This means that early on in life, it may have been very hard for you to interact with others. And I think this may be surprising to people who don't know you very well, because like I said, although you can be very introverted, judging by your placements, you look like, you thrive with people. So they may be surprised to learn that early in life, you may have felt very awkward. You may have felt like you didn't know how to express yourself with other people. It was difficult to express your true thoughts around others, especially, people you didn't know very well. You may have been kind of shy. That's kind of common with those who have Saturn and Gemini. There tends to be a lot of like shyness or social anxiety early on. Because Saturn, wherever Saturn is, we are initially challenged with it. We don't really inherit anything with Saturn. So for you, Saturn's in Gemini. Gemini has everything to do with, social relations, making friends, communicating, relating to people. So all of that, as a child and even through your teen years, it may have been very difficult and very unnatural for you. But, wherever Saturn is, we tend to get better at with time. So over the years, you will get better in this area, but this is an area that, you're going to do all the work, and basically no one's going to do it for you. So, no one's, like, I'd find it very surprising if you said, oh, I had a sibling who had a bunch of friends and I just was friends with their friends and it was really easy. For you, having Saturn and Gemini, it just doesn't work like that. You really have to do the work yourself to learn how to express yourself, how to relate to other people, how to make friends and network. You're not going to get, it's unlikely you're going to get a lot of help in that area in this life. It's something you have to work for yourself. But that's actually the value in it, because you start from the bottom, let's just say, in these areas, and, you work yourself to learn how to express yourself, how to make friends, how to relate to people and interact with others. because you have to learn all that yourself, very independently from a challenging area, challenging space, it makes that knowledge and experience that much more valuable later in life. So, over time, I would speculate, especially, getting into your 20s, and then we have the Saturn return at the end of our 20s as we enter age 30. So especially getting into your 20s, and then even more so getting into your 30s, these will be things that you will learn how to do. You'll learn how to, I should say you've already learned how to do these things, how to express yourself. But my point that I'm trying to make is, you can become kind of a master of these things. You can become an expert at these things. You'll have a certain wisdom that makes you more of an expert in these areas than you would have been if you had never had this whole experience at all. If you started out just being like, a social butterfly and knowing how to relate to everyone, that would be great. It would be easy, but you wouldn't have the same experience. You wouldn't really have that full in-depth understanding of how it all works that I would speculate you do now, because you went through those challenges in that area. So hopefully that makes sense. What else? And I guess, I kind of already said, the direction that this is going is that you can be an excellent, you can be a master communicator. And again, I think it's really interesting that your other placements go with this very well also. Sun in Virgo, Mercury and Mars in Virgo, and then Moon in Libra. These placements also can be a little bit shy, a little bit, socially reluctant or reclusive. But I do think that in those placements as well, it shows that you have that potential to be an excellent, very charismatic, excellent at understanding people, and, knowing how to interact with others. So I think that's really kind of interesting and exciting in a way. Saturn and South Node, when we combine those themes that I just kind of discussed with you, to me, they paint the picture of someone who initially, it sounds like you always have been very sensitive, and maybe wanted to help people and wanted to connect with others, but you may have not known, how to do that. How do you actually interact with people, or how do you help people? But it sounds like, the natural progression of your life, and of course your free will is a part of it, you're learning and all that, you're developing. I think the direction shows that you would most likely go in the direction, and probably already have gone in the direction of becoming an expert with like human relations, social relations. And again, I think you have the potential to really help people, in a really significant way, especially hands-on, like, face-to-face helping people in some kind of way. Okay, anyway, let's talk more about your challenges and your kind of upbringing, things like that, the really thick stuff, the heavy stuff. Okay, we already kind of went through the main challenges, so that's a good, that's good. And then, I also kind of talked about how it's not all bad, though. With those challenges comes a lot of experience, and there's potential there too. Okay, but let's kind of shift gears and talk about your upbringing, because we can see a little bit about your upbringing and childhood from the birth chart. Okay, so where should we start? You have, Sun in Virgo, Moon in Libra. These signs are side by side. To some extent, the Sun can represent the father, Moon can represent the mother. Because they are in very different signs from one another, they make kind of a harsh aspect to each other, a harsh angle. This suggests that your parents likely were very different from one another. They may have had very different parenting styles, very different, approaches with you, very different expectations, maybe. So because of that, there was a lot of contrast in your home growing up. And I should say, too, even if you grew up with just one parent, that one person may have had a lot of contrast within themselves or different expectations at different times. So while that is potentially very confusing, for you growing up, it's also advantageous in the sense that it allows you to understand two things at the same time. You can understand two very different perspectives at the same time. So this is just another thing on top of many other parts of your chart, which suggests that you're extremely empathetic. I would think that would almost be a huge struggle managing that level of empathy, because it would be very difficult knowing your feelings versus other people's feelings. It's like they're so tied into each other, it's hard to differentiate the two. Or also inside, the energy from your inside yourself versus the energy from the outside. It's like you're just soaking up the energies out from outside so strongly that it's hard to differentiate what is you and what is not, kind of. But another advantage of, I got a little sidetracked there, but another advantage of, being able to hold the two ideas in your head at the same time, two different perspectives from, which came from your childhood. It also allows you to learn very well too, to handle, to learn, to understand two different concepts at the same time, or, it allows you to understand really complex concepts. And that also is something that goes, hand in hand with your Virgo and Libra energy. So it's in multiple parts of your chart. So I think that's a big part of your life too, learning a lot, understanding really great, detailed, large amounts of detailed information, complex subjects and things like that. And I would speculate that you may want to use that information to help people. I don't know, kind of going out on a limb there, but but yeah, a lot of that, in a weird way, that contrast from your home growing up, that's what allows you to be so excellent when it comes to being empathetic, understanding other people, understanding people who have different points of view, different experiences than yourself, as well as learning, information as well, complex information. Okay, another area in your chart we can look to see your experience growing up is the IC and the South Node. For you, they're both in the same sign. IC and South Node are both in Cancer. This means that as a child, you may have actually been very emotional, much more so than you are now. Like I said earlier, I would speculate you're very logical, very even keel. Typically when we have Moon in Libra, we think things through rather than experiencing things emotionally. We kind of immediately intellectualize what we're experiencing, especially emotionally. So as an adult, I would speculate you're very logical, very even keel, stable, But as a child, because you have South Node and IC in Cancer, they suggest that you may have been a very emotional child. Feeling just so many feelings, really strong feelings. What else? Also, typically when we experience Cancer energy, I've noticed that there tends to be this desire to connect with others, and that can lead to a lot of connecting with others, making friends very readily, because others feel approachable. You're approachable when you have Cancer energy. So as a child, you may have been very approachable. Others, kids may have just approached you and you may have made friends very easily. But on the other hand, there's also a lot of solitude that can come with Cancer placements as well. So having IC and South Node in Cancer, to me, they suggest you may have been a kid that was very emotional. You may have connected with others very easily at times, but you may have also had very long periods of, isolation, solitude. And then when we combine that with these other placements in the chart, it sounds like, you as a kid, you definitely wanted to connect with other people, but it may have been very challenging for you to do so. What else could we talk about? I think I mostly covered it. Challenges, past life, upbringing. I think that's the gist of it. And I think it's interesting how, through astrology, we can see how, sometimes, we may have been very different as a child or had a very different experience than what we have later on, if that makes sense. But that's kind of what I see with your chart. Excuse me. Okay, let's talk about career. What kind of career would be good for you? I've already kind of hinted at that or flirted with that subject a lot, but we can talk about career as well as your reputation, what it's like for you, career, public life, things like that. So we've already talked about a lot of your strengths. I think the two biggest strengths that really that I keep seeing in multiple parts of the chart are your ability to handle great amounts of information and learn very rapidly, be an excellent student. And then also, of course, as being very empathetic, understanding other people, So clearly, I think those are two really great strengths that you have that you can use in your career. And really, those things alone don't narrow down a whole lot what you're meant to do, obviously. But we can also look to, midheaven is in Capricorn, North Node is in Capricorn as well. So these indicate that maybe doing something on your own, doing something independent, maybe running your own business, multiple businesses. And also, there can definitely be a lot of authoritativeness that come with Capricorn placements. But I would speculate Capricorn's ruled by Saturn, so these things take time, is what I'm getting at. So I think, especially later in life, you may run your own business, be some kind of manager or leader in some kind of way. And again, I can hear, cynics saying like, well, wouldn't that be true for most people? Maybe it would be, but especially for you, you have a lot of potential with being a really excellent leader, or especially doing something that requires some level of autonomy. So being a business owner, something like that. And I would speculate, or I'd think with your birth chart that you would, do something on your own having to do with helping people in a way that involves a lot of information. So for instance, I could see you being a really great medical professional. You'd be excellent at understanding the human body and, all the medicines, and, really great at, you'd be great at the emotional side of it, of, caretaking and things like that. But you'd be also excellent with understanding the information necessary to, maintain a certain level of detachment to make the right decision, maybe at some difficult times. You'd also be great with anything psychological in nature. I think you'd be really excellent at understanding the human mind, understanding people. And again, you have that balance of, you'd be able to be approachable and emotionally receptive and, maintain a direct relationship with a patient. But then also have that level of detachment, and knowing the information, knowing how to help them, even when it may be difficult. So medical, psychological, something like that. Those are the main things I think of, because those really check all the boxes. But really, when I say these things, I'm not trying to guess, what you do for a living. I'm trying to illustrate what kind of themes might be most advantageous for you to use. So you don't have to necessarily be a medical professional or work in psychology to have a fulfilling career. I'm just saying, those are examples of things that would utilize all the major themes that I'm seeing in your chart. But anything else that involves information, could be teaching too. You'd be an excellent teacher. That would be, something that, you're working kind of independently, being a leader, using information, something like that, teacher. But something where you're utilizing those different strengths, I think that's what I would imagine being the most fulfilling for you. You'd be, I would speculate you'd be very good at something like that, based on your placements. Helping people is really key. I haven't talked about your Chiron yet, but it's in your 12th house, close to your ascendant. So it's in many, many different parts of the chart. It shows that you really want to help people. You want to be there for others. So I think that would be the underlying thing. I think if you're in a career where you don't feel like you're helping people, or some careers, we may even feel like we're hindering other people, I think that would just be absolutely toxic for you. You want to do something where you're helping people, nurturing people, something like that, I think would be really good for you. Okay, and then lastly, let's talk about your love life a little bit. We'll talk about your approach to relationships, what kind of person you're attracted to, and then maybe even more importantly, what kind of person I see you being with long term. We'll talk astrologically as well as just more general, and I'll describe what I view as kind of the most ideal relationship for you based on your astrology. So for most of that, if not all of it, for most of that we can look to Venus, Mars, and the descendants, and of course take it into account with your sun and moon, things like that. So first let's talk about Venus, Mars, and Venus and Mars have a lot to do with attraction, desire, love, pleasure. Venus is more the romantic side of that, and Mars is more sexual in nature. So first let's actually start with Mars. So Mars is more sexual attraction, as well as kind of like our sexuality. So for you, Mars is in Virgo, and this means that you'd be attracted to someone that is like Virgo. And this is pretty convenient since you have Sun in Virgo as well. You are Virgo. So not only will you relate to someone who, they don't have to be Virgo, but someone who embodies the traits of Virgo. Not only will you relate to them, but you'll also be very attracted to them too. So that would be someone who is definitely intellectual. Intelligence would be attractive for you, but also someone very practical. So kind of no nonsense. Someone who's a little bit direct. What else? Practical. Someone with a good work ethic. Someone who takes care of themselves. Who's self-sufficient. Someone like Virgo, basically. So that could literally be someone who has major placements in Virgo. Could also be someone who has Taurus or Capricorn placements. Those are two earth signs. So anyone with major placements in any of those three signs, Taurus, Capricorn, or especially Virgo, is going to kind of check that box of that sexual attraction and desire. So especially that sexual compatibility as well will be there. But again, like I said, you have Sun in Virgo, so you'll relate to people with those signs too a lot, because you are practical, hardworking, intelligent, intellectual, things like that. So definitely earth signs are something to look out for, especially Virgo. Virgo is much more intellectual and analytical than Taurus or Capricorn. So there is that kind of distinction there. So I think you'd relate even more so to Virgo than Taurus or Capricorn. Okay, and then switching gears a little bit, you have Venus in Leo. So this means that, although you are typically, very practical, very organized, when it comes to relationships, I'm not saying you're not practical, but in relationships, you almost have a kind of fiery approach with Venus in Leo. Okay, typically when we have Venus in Leo, we tend to know right away whether we are attracted to someone or not. There's a level of clarity there because Leo is a very straightforward sign, very confident sign. So I think this may be refreshing. You have all these Virgo and Libra placements, which can be really great, but sometimes it can be difficult for you to know where to go because you're taking into account so many different variables. I think that's the beauty of your approach, but it's also difficult for you at times because it can be overwhelming, the amount of data that you take into account when making even sometimes basic decisions. However, when it comes to romance and relationships, it's a little bit different because Venus in Leo is a very different energy. This means that you know how you feel romantically. When you meet someone, you kind of just know if you're interested in them or not, for the most part. And your romantic attraction would also be very consistent as well. Once you meet someone and you're attracted to them, you're stuck on them. There's definitely a lot of loyalty and I would almost say possessiveness that comes with Venus and Leo. However, again, you have these other Virgo and Libra placements, which suggest you're a little bit more detached and kind of reason oriented. So that could, lessen the possessiveness a little bit. But Venus and Leo is definitely very strong, and very simple, very black and white. When you are attracted to someone, it's that simple. You know it if it's there or not. And and then you once you're attracted to someone, you want someone you can have fun with too, and especially for a long time. So what sign would go well with all that would of course be Leo. So anyone who has major placements in Leo, those placements will be near your Venus, so they will they'll totally jive with the way you approach relationships. Will jive with anyone who has Leo placements. But someone who has Aries or Sagittarius placements as well, those are, two fellow fire signs. So those signs will also be very outgoing, fiery, confident, and they're going to be very playful. They're going to want a lot of fun and adventure. So this is what you're all about. This is what you want, at least relationship wise. This is what you want your relationship to be about. You want it to be about fun and self-expression. So any of the fire signs will definitely work well for this. Aries may be particularly interesting as well since you have Aries rising. So that adds another level of, someone who has Aries placements. Not only will you be attracted to them because they will be like Leo, they'll be fiery, playful, adventurous, confident, etc. But also you'll relate to them a lot because you have Aries rising. Because you too like to initiate. You can tend to be the one who makes the first move at times, sometimes. We'll talk more about that later because it gets a little bit more complicated than that because you have Libra moon, which is very different. Okay, so far we're kind of all over the place. Definitely attraction with Leo and Virgo, maybe other fire or earth signs. But the one placement that I would look to more than any for long-term compatibility would be the descendant. Your descendant is in Libra. It's always opposite the ascendant. So ascendant is in Aries. Your descendant is in Libra. Okay, so typically the way I see this working is, you are Aries rising. You would typically be the initiator. You would be the one who kind of makes the first move maybe with your partner. And you're the one who may be more strong-willed. You may be very strong-willed in kind of a more open way than your partner. This doesn't mean that your partner doesn't have a strong personality or a strong intellect. It just means that they may be more easygoing or go with the flow. Now, I think this may be unusual for you because you have Moon in Libra, so you are also go with the flow, but you can also be kind of strong-willed and be the initiator as well. You can kind of go either way. You can be the initiator, or you can just kind of go with the flow too. So I think there's a level of balance here. And these placements are a little bit contradictory astrologically. So typically with Aries rising, you'd want to be with someone more like Libra, someone who's easygoing, flexible, intellectual. But you also have Moon in Libra. So on the one hand, this can kind of work well because this means that anyone who has Libra placements, you'll relate to very well. They'll understand you on a deep level since you have your Moon there. But also, if you can embrace that Aries rising part of you, the part of you that initiates and likes to be strong-willed and is very decisive, if you can embrace that side of you, then you'll work very well with a Libra person. You'll relate to each other, and there'll be enough of an opposites attract type of dynamic. But on the other hand, you have Moon in Libra too, and typically when we have strong Libra placements like that, typically it makes us easygoing, receptive, and we tend to want a partner who is more strong-willed or more confident, more decisive than ourselves, someone else who makes the first move. And you have both. You have Aries rising and Moon in Libra. So I'd speculate that in a really ideal situation, in a perfect world, you'd have a partner that is kind of both. Someone who maybe has some fire placements like Aries or Leo. Mostly Aries or Leo. I think Sagittarius maybe to a lesser extent. But, ideally it would be someone who has that fiery charisma, that oomph, the directiveness. Yeah. Someone who takes initiative, someone who's very strong-willed and, outgoing and transparent. But also, if they could also be flexible too, and, if they have some kind of intellectual kind of receptive side as well, that may be asking a lot of someone, but in a way you have all that. So someone else who has, it's both the polarities, it's both the sides of Aries and Libra. You contain a lot of energy from both sides of this. So it's kind of interesting. This is not typically how this goes astrologically. Typically, we may lean more toward one side of Aries or Libra, if any. And then we, typically we want the other side. Aries wants Libra, Libra wants Aries. But because you are on both sides, I would speculate you kind of want both from another person too. So astrologically, that could be maybe someone else who has Aries and Libra placements, or fire and air placements in general. Anyone with a lot of fire and air placements will be able to be direct and take the lead. Take control, be very confident, but they'll also be able to observe and detach as well, and be receptive too. Sorry for that noise. I forgot to close the window before doing this, so it's a little bit noisy. But yeah, someone I think especially someone else who has placements along the Aries Libra axis. That I think that would be the most tantalizing for you. You'll relate to them a lot. They'll be very attractive to you. You'll naturally kind of fit in with each other. You'll know what to expect from them, and vice versa. To me, that would be more attractive than anything else. I know that's a little bit complicated or nuanced, but that's what I see the most. And if they did have a little bit of earth placement sprinkled in there, then there'd be that, sexual attraction as well. But I think the most important thing would be they have to be decisive enough, but also receptive enough. They have to take the lead enough, but also be flexible enough too. So it's really about a balance of being on both sides of that spectrum. Let me know if that makes sense at all, I guess, or what your experience with that is, because sometimes it's difficult to explain like appearingly contradictory energies in a chart. But that's what I see. I see both sides are true. Both sides are in you, and that's what you'd be attracted to in someone else too. Aries and Libra. Okay, so in a way, usually I like to kind of go through the elements astrologically after this, and we already kind of did that for the most part. We haven't talked about water yet, but earth signs could definitely be a sexual attraction, and you could relate to them a lot. I don't see a lot more than that, though. I don't think that is the bottom line for you. I don't think that's the most important thing. The most attraction for you I see is in Libra and the fire signs, really, especially Aries and Leo. Aries, Leo, Libra. Those are kind of the signs I see. But again, other fire or air signs could work too. There could be attraction there. Sagittarius, Aquarius, or Gemini. Gemini, I would say to a lesser extent, probably because your Saturn is there. So one way or another, Gemini people will teach you lessons. There's a lot of karma there. It's very heavy. It may be excellent to have like a mentor who's a Gemini, or it could even come in a different way of Gemini's, bringing chaos into your life, and then you're learning lessons that way. Some amount of that could be good, but I wouldn't advise that in a romantic situation, because it's gonna bring this element of like kind of darkness and heaviness. If you do have a relationship with a Gemini person, it's probably going to take a long time to develop, not only because that's common with Gemini people anyway, but also that, your Saturn is there. So it's going to kind of put a damper on things that may be more difficult. Aquarius or Sagittarius could definitely work. They are cerebral, so you'll relate on that level. They're intellectual like you are, but they're also kind of rowdy, kind of rebellious. So that could be attractive to you too. They could kind of check off both boxes that way. Or Aries or Libra. So I'm mostly looking to those signs, the fire and air signs. Other than that, earth signs we kind of talked about. Virgo, there could be some attraction to, but it's mostly just attraction for the most part. Taurus or Capricorn, I don't see being that interesting for you. There's not a lot pointing in those directions, unless, of course, we have to take into account the whole chart. Like for instance, if someone had Capricorn Sun, but then they had a bunch of placements in Aries and Sagittarius and Aquarius or Libra, that would make more sense, because there'd be a lot of fire and air there. But just Capricorn or Taurus alone, I don't see a lot of interest there for you, really. And then talking about the water element, it is interesting that you have no water planets at all. You lack the water element. So it's very interesting that your childhood may have had a lot of water. So, water in astrology, of course, has to do with emotion and intuition and imagination. Your childhood, it may have been just drenched in all of that. But going throughout most of the rest of your life, there's not a lot of really heavy emotion in it for the most part. I wouldn't, speculating based on your chart, I wouldn't describe you as a particularly emotional person. So what happens, the way it goes when we lack an element in our chart that way, it can go one of two ways. On the one hand, we can be very attracted to that element because it represents something that we lack. So it's almost like a magnet, attracting something. Someone who's very emotional and creative, imaginative, it may be very, exotic for you, because they may have traits that are just different than what you have, and vice versa. They may not be so intellectual or I tend to find that people with a lot of water or a lot of emotional placements, they want stability. They want that groundedness. So, it could work that you may enjoy their level of, emotion and spontaneity, creativity, and they may enjoy, the way you make sense of things. They may enjoy your groundedness. It looks like you're a very grounded person, generally speaking. On the other hand, though, especially for long-term, like romantic relationships, it would be very difficult because you just don't have enough in common. There's no common ground. You need something else going on in their chart for you to relate a little bit so that you can understand each other. Because otherwise, misunderstandings are going to happen. The way your needs work are very different. You have different needs. So long-term romantic situation with a water sign, I wouldn't recommend for you. I don't really see it working. But I would say, maybe in non-romantic situations, you could be drawn toward water signs, in one way or another throughout your life because, you have something that the other lacks. So it's interesting. It's captivating. But for a really deep, close relationship, it could definitely happen. It's not something that stands out to me though. It's not, it would be difficult. It would require a lot of mutual understanding because you would be very different from each other. Okay, but yeah, that's pretty much the way I see your romantic compatibility, and it's pretty much the way I see your whole chart. At this part of the reading, I like to just kind of look around your chart and go back and touch up on anything that I may have missed or anything else I wanted to say. I did briefly mention your Chiron in 12th house Aries. This means that you're currently experiencing your Chiron return. Okay, so this means that just recently, like this year, 2022, 2023, you may have had some really deep, profound, life-changing experience involving you being a mentor for someone, or maybe someone else helping you in some kind of way. But this is very karmic. You may... typically, I think Chiron energy can be very awkward. It can be very difficult. You may have had to help someone in a way that was very challenging for you. Or again, it could go the other way too. It could be you help someone else helping you. Typically, the Chiron is the wounded healer. So typically, the way it would work would be you helping someone else with something that you may have struggled with early in life. It may have been something that you struggled with earlier in life, where no one was there to help you. You had to kind of deal with it on your own. So now you may have the opportunity to help someone else with something that you've experienced. And in a way, it helps to heal that trauma that you experienced in yourself. Does that make sense? So, that's the whole theme with the wounded healer, that he has a wound that is never healed. But the only way he can get any level of comfort or separation from the disease, is by helping other people who have the same affliction. So that may be something that you're experiencing this year or last year as you're having your Chiron return. But I wanted to mention for the rest of your life as well, Chiron, it's basically conjunct to your ascendant. So this means that this whole theme of the wounded healer and helping other people, it's coming up, especially this year and last year, but this is something that is, it's in your blood, in your veins. This is something that is integral to your whole experience here. So I think it's just an interesting way of summing up how you are meant to be a healer. You're meant to be a helper. I did want to mention something else, though, too, I noticed, is that with Aries rising, Mars is your chart ruler. Mars is, the warrior. It's the god of war. It's also interesting that Mars is conjunct your sun in Virgo. So, yes, you are, a helper, a healer. You're very nurturing, very receptive. But on the other hand, you have this warrior energy as well within you. Mars conjunct sun in Virgo suggests that you are very ambitious. You're constantly, working, constantly fixing things, improving things. You have a really strong work ethic, and you have a strong ability to fight. Some people who have Mars conjunct Sun even want to fight on some level. And this is even stronger with your Aries rising. So this to me brings about themes involving, fighting for someone who can't fight for themselves, fighting to defend someone, fighting for someone's rights, fighting for, I don't know, it adds a whole dimension, I think, to helping someone. You're not only using the information to help someone, your intellect, and those nurturing instincts, but you're also using these fighting instincts too, which, I think in a way that makes you that much more of like a potential hero, I don't know, it adds a whole set of tools to your toolbox, kind of helping someone. I don't know, maybe having to fight someone who is an antagonizer in order to save someone or help someone fight. I think it might make more sense for you than it does to me right now. But I just wanted to mention that, you may have some level of like competitiveness and some kind of fighting energy too. Which to me is very interesting because most of your chart suggests that you aren't typically like that. You go with the flow, you're easygoing, but there's this other side of that too, where you can definitely fight as well. So yeah, and Mars conjunction, it's in Virgo, so it's still maybe fixated on helping someone though. So fighting in order to help someone. I don't know, something like that. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, but that's pretty much my take on your whole birth chart. So, anyone else who may be listening to this, if you want a reading like this, my rate is $30 United States currency. You can get a reading through my website, manic.mercurian.net, or you can always email me, manic.mercurian@gmail.com, and I put all my information in the description of these videos. And I really wanted to give you a lot of thanks too. It's readings like this that allow me to do all this, to post the videos and everything else. So I really appreciate the business. Okay, but yeah, really interesting chart, and I hope this reading helps you, or at least was just interesting, or maybe confirms a few things. But yeah, and I'll hope you have a great day. See you later.